I was a prisoner and he's threatening to kill me, probably would have obeyed myself too.
Well,
They still do
I
that.
dare say he meant it.
Yeah.
They
I would too.
Yep.
They still kind of do that because the guy I know,
Yeah.
and training was in the Air Force, I believe.
Come on in, Neil.
Saying that he was, well, no, a friend of his was on guard duty, and they told him if this guy gets down, you take his place until we catch him. And they gave you a rifle with no bullets in it. And he said that guy was in there and made a break for it, and he just stood there, and when he got right close to the door, he just drew back. Hit him with the gun butt, just laid him out. He said, I'd have killed him before I stuck in here. All right, I'm going to
Anyway,
That's
you get back to the war story.
That's another one.
Yeah.
We left Halifax on February the 7th. The reason I remember it for sure, that's Sister Mary's birthday. We loaded on, was on the boat, and we left Halifax, Nova Scotia on the 7th, and we were,
How old are you?
the boat had been transformed from a luxury liner to a troop ship, and the bunks were 4 high to sleep in, and they were just metal frames with canvas stretched between them, and you could just climbed up over if you was in the top bunk. You couldn't sleep in the bottom bunk. Down where we were down on D deck. I was. Different ones were on different places, different decks. But D deck would be 5 decks down from the top. It was well below water, and the floor of the deck there was 2 inches or maybe 3 inches deep in water and vomit. And whenever the ship would heel over, they told us that we would be going not in a convoy for protection against the U-boats, but submarines, but we would be going by ourselves because we could travel fast enough, and by changing bearings, directions, ever so often, a submarine couldn't lay their sights on us and hit us with a torpedo, which we didn't know whether to believe it or not. But whenever it would change course, the boat would lean away over, and I don't know, I never measured it, and I don't know anybody that did, but they said the big long mast, antenna mast thing that stuck up from the boat, I don't know how high it was way high, but they said that the top of it, when the boat would turn, the top of it was going as much as 70 feet. And I don't doubt it, because it felt like the boat was turning over every time, and all that water and vomit on the deck floor, the outside bunks on the D deck down there would be underwater. I mean, there'd be water up against them, water and vomit, like I said before. And I'm not exaggerating any, but I was seasick before a lot of the people even knew the motor was running, the ship's engines were running, and we could feel vibration. But I was sick before a lot of the boys that had been sailors and so forth even knew we were moving. I was sick, I mean sick, and was sick for 7 days till we landed in Scotland on February the 14th. I was sick the whole entire time, but I still had to stand stand watch in passageways, hallways of the ship, and I always told the whoever was sergeant of the guard or officer of the guards or whatever, we had to stand out in the hallways with rifles. I don't know what we were protecting. Anyway, that's what we had to do. And I'd always tell them, I said, put me close to a barrel. They had big barrels for waste barrels and to throw up in. And I said, put me close to one of them because I cannot help throwing up. And we had just got underway from Halifax when they picked up a German broadcast, and it was, most people now have forgotten about him or never heard about him. There was an Englishman that was a traitor, I guess you'd call him. He went to the British, or to the German side, and he called himself Lord Haw Haw. He was like a British lord, and he talked down to about everybody. But anyway, he broadcast for the Germans, and he came on with this broadcast and said at a certain time on that date, 7th of February, the Ile-de-France left Halifax loaded with Canadian and United States soldiers and bound for Scotland, Greenock or Gourock, I don't remember which. One of them's on one side of the river and one's on the other, and the boats come in on one side, and when they leave from the other side. But and everything that he said was right. The time and the number of soldiers, and they were Canadian and American soldiers both on the boat, and everything he said was absolutely accurate. He knew. I mean, there were spies in Halifax, I'm sure, and he said none of them, or at least very few, will ever reach Scotland. They'll be torpedoed in the middle of the North Atlantic. And they had just told us that we would be going fast enough that a submarine couldn't lay their sights on us to hit us with a torpedo. And he told us they would. Everything else he told us was right, so it gave us a lot of things to think about. But it was cold. I don't think I was up on the top deck outside but one time, and it was bitter cold. In February in the North Atlantic, it's bound to be cold. But I know one morning the ship's captain, Admiral something or other, I don't know who he was, come by on his morning inspection. And just about the time he got to where I was, my station in the passageway there, he was just a few feet from me. And right then I had to throw up. And I stepped over to my barrel just about 2 steps, and I was heaving everything I'd had for a week, seemed like. And the regimental sergeant major stopped and said something about me throwing up there, and I said, well, I'm sorry, but I said it was either throw up in that barrel or throw up on him when he passed. And I said, I can't help it. And, well, okay, and he went on. I never got any more trouble with it, but being seasick, nobody that's ever been seasick had no idea how sick you can be. I think I got a pretty good idea. And we were hungry, smelled stuff cooking in the galleys, and everything that we smelled made you sick. That's all there was to it. It just, that's just the way it was. And we landed in Scotland. I don't remember whether it was, like I said a while ago, the boats came into either Gorrock or Greenock, and one was on one side of the River Clyde and one was on the other side, and one of them was incoming traffic and the other one was outgoing traffic, and I don't remember which it was. And that was on February the 14th of 1944. Have you got more tape? You want to get some more or no?
Jamie's tape. And
Grandpa, it's up to you. When you're ready to stop,
whenever you're ready to stop, we'll quit.
Anyway, when we got on the train there, and by the time I got out on the ground, I wasn't sick anymore. And I got to looking, it wasn't all that cold in Scotland. It was cold, but I mean it was better than the North Atlantic a whole lot. And the little dinky engines on the trains, they had a turntable there. And to turn the engines around, I had seen turntables here in the United States where they put big long steam engines on. And it's all powered, years to turn it around. And the little engine, they pushed it up, or run it up on that turntable. And the engineer got out on one end and the fireman got out on the other end of the track there that was on that turntable and put a big long pole down in the turntable like and just walked it around. No bigger than the engines were. But for some reason that train that came from London up to into Scotland, the Flying Scot they called it, the engine wasn't very big, but it was at that time was the fastest train in the world. And the cars, passenger cars on that train, there wasn't just seats like there was in the ones back in Canada, just wooden benches is what they were. But they were little compartments, and the car would have a walkway down one side of the car and little compartments on the other side of the car, and the train next car behind it, the passageway would be on the other side, opposite side, and they alternated each car, the passageway and the little compartments. I don't know whether that was for balance, I don't know what it was, but that's just the way it was there. And they took us to Aldershot, England, and put us in barracks, Aldershot barracks. It was huge, big barracks complex, and put us in the barracks that in World War I, the Canadian Army had rioted there, and because of the poor conditions, there was a stove in the barracks room, big, I don't remember how many beds there were in each room. There were several, and a little dinky stove there, but nothing to burn in it. We didn't have any heat. And that's what the Canadian Army in World War I, the fathers and uncles of a bunch of the boys that were there then, they had rioted there in 1918. But anyway, that's where they put us. And we had night marches and just training. And one time we were on a night march, training exercise thing, and we had marched, I don't know, 45 minutes or I don't remember now, and they told us to break off to the side of the road, and our corporal, Corporal Fox, happened to be right where there was a sewer under the road, and it was so dark you couldn't see anything, and he just stepped off of the side of the road, and he happened to be right on that sewer and fell right off of it and down onto some rocks, and he was pretty badly hurt. We never did see him after that. He wasn't killed, but he was badly hurt. But this Corporal Fox, he was a character in his own right. He was an Irishman that had taken part in the 1916 Irish Rebellion when the country of Ireland rebelled against British rule, and they had England was fighting in Ireland and fighting in France both, but he survived the Irish Rebellion, and he never did say just where he had been, but when the Spanish Civil War broke out in 1936, he went to Spain and fought on one side or the other, I don't remember. Marshal Franco was on one side in the Spanish Civil War, and the king was on the other side, but he lived through that some way and went to Canada, but we asked him how he got out of Spain into Canada, and he never would say. He just said, I might want to travel that route again, and I have no idea, but he had been somebody, the word got around, and I don't know whether it was true or not, that between the Irish Rebellion in 1916 and the Spanish Civil War in 1936, that part of that time he had been in the French Foreign Legion in Africa, but I don't know. But he never did say, but we just heard that. But in the training in England, they tell you of a morning what the dress would be that day, how much, whether you had all your equipment, your webbing equipment, straps and everything, and big backpack and small backpack and gas mask and water bottle and ammunition pouches and everything like that, or whether you just had certain items on. You might have nothing but just your webbing equipment, they called it, straps and ammunition pouches and water canteen, or you might have everything on. You did have your gas mask, you carried your gas mask. But anyway, this Sergeant Fox, every morning, he would come out with whatever Army equipment we were supposed to have on and march up and down through the company area there without a stitch of clothes on, nothing but what the Army equipment we were supposed to have. And he says, this will be the dress for today. And he'd have nothing on whatsoever but just the Army pouches and bags and straps and one thing and another. But he was something else. but he stepped off the end of this sewer, and we never saw him after that. Have no idea whatever happened to him. But from the barracks we could see just acres and acres of ground, just foundations of buildings where had been bombed during the Blitz in 1940. The Germans had bombed it and it had burned, and there was just nothing left there. The barracks, at Aldershot Barracks, a lot of it had been destroyed. But they came out with, told us one morning on parade that they were making up a draft, they called them, to go to Africa, and to North Africa, and undergo some training there and be issued tropical kit, lighter weight uniform, shorts and stuff like that. And then we would go to Italy. They were going to invade Italy, and we would go to Italy. And all of us in our barracks room said, well, we're going to go, we'll volunteer for that. Everything in the Canadian Army is multiple choice. You've got different things you can volunteer for, or you can just not volunteer for anything and do what they tell you to do. And we said, well, we're going to volunteer for to go to North Africa. They're going to issue us tropical gear, clothing and everything, and said it's bound to be better than here in this cold, wet thing and no heat. So we all did, and when we were getting ready to go, they had us out in front of our barracks there, and you'd put your blanket down, one of your blankets down on the pavement there, and all your Army equipment, your rifle and gas mask and everything that belonged to the Army. Anything that didn't belong to the Army could stay in your duffel bag. But everything that belonged to the Army had to be out there in plain sight. So we were all lined up there, and the colonel come down through and looking at everything. And when he got to my blanket there, he looked it over and said, where's your other pair of Army eyeglasses? I said, I've never been issued any. I only have this one pair. He said, back to the barracks, you can't go to Africa. You got to have 2 pair of glasses. So I had to go back and put up with some more English weather. But to get ahead of my story, really, he said, go to the eye doctor tomorrow and get another pair of glasses. Said, you're still not going to North Africa, they're leaving today, but you go tomorrow and get another pair of glasses. You have to have 2 pair of glasses. But when D-Day came along, and I went off the end of the boat to wade into France, I still just had 1 pair of glasses. You didn't need 2 pair of glasses to go to France, but you did to go to Africa. Okay, that's enough for one day.
How about that?
Oh, look at
There's a lot more.
You know, it's kind of hard to believe. I got the...
From they sent the rest of the guys to Africa and you couldn't go because you didn't have 2 pair of glasses.
That was the last I told.
Yep.
You were still stuck. You were still stuck in England.
You ready?
Yep.
after I was turned down to go to Africa because I didn't have one pair of glasses, I went to the medical officer to be examined to get another pair of glasses, which I never did get. But we had some training and stuff in England, and it was still cold and wet and miserable and everything else. But then they put us in camps, what they call a sealed camp. Only high clearance people could get in and out. We couldn't get out. We couldn't even write a letter that would be mailed then. We could write, but they would be kept till some further date, they said, before they'd be sent home. And we had all we done there in the sealed camps was 5 miles of marching, double time marching. Walk 100 yards, I mean just ordinary march 100 yards, and double time run 200 yards. And we were fed 4 times a day at the mess hall, and we could still go anytime we wanted to the mess hall. There was always something there to eat. So just 5 miles a day exercise and eat's all we done. And sometimes they'd have us cleaner weapons or something like it. And we were there, I don't remember how many days, but the Germans were still coming over occasionally. About every night they'd come over someplace and bomb and take pictures and one thing and another. But we were billeted in tents and had slip trenches around the outside of the trench, and when there was a German air raid, we were supposed to get out and get in those slip trenches, which there was nothing, the only danger really, unless they decided to bomb the camp, which they never did, and I never did hear of one being bombed even, but was anti-aircraft shrapnel falling down and banging you on the head. But one night we had an air raid, or there was one close there, and everybody got out of the tent with me, and I never even woke up. The next morning when I woke up, it was daylight, and all I could see was just holes in the roof of the tent where anti-aircraft shrapnel had come down through the tent, but wasn't any of it hit me, so I didn't have anything to worry about. But some of the boys said they tried to wake me up, but I just couldn't wake up. I didn't wake up anyhow.